Here with your weekly Dynasty breakdown and speculation article with the video. So today we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Saints. That's what my latest article was on. But before that, I want to talk to you guys about a few things, especially some important dates that we have coming up. We know that free agency is right around the corner, but before that, there's a few other important things that I want to mention. So by the time you're watching this video, the franchise and transition tag window will be open. So that starts on February 23rd. I'm doing this video a little bit earlier. So by the time you're watching it, February 3rd, it'll already be a day past. This will come out on Wednesday. So February 23rd through March 9th is the franchise and transition tag period. So what does that mean? It's the only time really that teams must make a decision on whether they want to franchise a player or not. So it also includes the transition tag. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to kind of lump everything together in one. There is a real life difference between the two, but for us, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. I can go into depth, in a future article about the differences between them, but today I'll oversimplify and just lump all three into one category. Regardless, like I said, after this time window, we'll know who's been tagged. So we should see, probably by the time you're watching this video, at least one or two players tagged. I know that teams are probably going to be anxious to get started with that. So that takes you all the way to March 9th. The next day, March 10th through the 13th, is when compensatory draft picks are announced. So that doesn't really affect us too much. It'll affect you, if your favorite team has a possibility of getting a draft pick that you want to see where that falls. But as far as, what we do Dynasty, it doesn't really affect us much. I just thought it was worth mentioning. So these compensatory picks are awarded to teams based on a measured and calculated formula that the NFL uses. Essentially, they calculate each team's gained and lost value throughout the year, and then they award picks based on, what they deem necessary. Like I said, it doesn't really affect us too much. After that, we have free agency contact. So that's on March 15th. That runs for 48 hours. And really all that means is that teams are legally able to talk to free agents. I don't know. I don't want to be naive and say that talking doesn't happen at all, because I'm sure it does. But legally, teams are able to contact players and talk to them. So there's strict rules in the NFL, when they can talk, when they can't. Up until this date, they're prohibited from doing it. But after that, March 15th to 17th, on March 17th, the new league year begins and free agency begins. And that's what we're all excited about. Other than the draft, this is probably one of the most anticipated days, starting periods for us as far as owners go. So March 17th, free agents will be able to sign with the teams that they're choosing. It applies to all free agents except for exclusive rights free agents. So those players, exclusive rights, if the team that previously had a contract with them wants to give them a contract, they have no leverage at all. They have to accept it. So other than those free agents, any player is free to sign with whoever they want. So those are the ones that are on my radar right now. Obviously, it's worth mentioning that the NFL draft spans April and May. It starts April 29th and ends May 1st. So that's probably going to be the pinnacle of, what we want to watch as far as dynasty owners. But free agency is a big deal too. We'll see where most of these players go, before the draft even happens. So next, I want to get into some speculation. As I said, we're going to be talking about the Saints during this article, this video breakdown. And there's really three players that I deem necessary to talk about. They are Jared Cook, Jameis Winston, and Ty Montgomery. Montgomery, probably not as much. I mean, he's still a running back. He's still owned, I think, in a little over 8% of Dynasty owner league. So he's worth at least mentioning, but I'm not going to talk about him too in depth. First up, we have Jared Cook. Everybody knows he's the tight end for the New Orleans Saints. Currently, he's 33 years old. He is just finishing up a $7.5 million per year salary contract. He finished as tight end 18. That's not great, especially for $7.5 million salary that he has. But I had a fun fact that I put in the article. I want to read it to you guys. So there's only two tight ends that finished lower in the rankings than Cook, but had a higher salary. So can you name them? I'll put that at the end of my article. You guys can check that out and get the answer. So very inefficient, for Cook, the fact that there's only a couple players that were more expensive than him, but finished worse. So he's kind of at the back end of those high expensive tight ends and what they did production-wise. So like I already mentioned, he had a lackluster season. He did end with 7 touchdowns, which is impressive. And it's even more impressive the fact that he had disappointing 58 percent catch percentage in the red zone. So he wasn't very efficient in the red zone. That happens, I guess. I mean, especially a player like him, big tight end, you'd think that he'd be a little more apt to come down with those passes. But regardless, I wouldn't declare that Cook has nothing left. It's likely he'll return for the 2021 season, but I don't think it's going to be with the Saints, especially due to their cap restrictions that they're going to have. They have a lot of work to do with the cap, so I just don't see them being able to pay him, $7.5, $8 million. He might even want more than that. He might have deserved it for what he's done through his career. So we'll see. He's going to demand roughly the same contract that Jimmy Graham did. I think Jimmy's 1 year older right now, but when he signed his contract, he was a year younger than Cook. So right around that $8 to $10 million range. It's probably going to be for 1 year given the age, but something we got to monitor. I don't think he's coming back also because we know that the Saints traded up to get Adam Troutman in the last draft, in the 2020 draft. So the Saints traded their 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round 2020 to trade up to get Troutman. So he's the future. There's no doubt about it, unless they decide to trade him. But from right now, what we're looking at, it looks like Troutman is the future of the tight end landscape in New Orleans. I expect Cook to move on. Up next, we have Jameis. So Jameis is kind of a hot topic to talk about. We all know that he signed a single-year contract worth a little over $1 million last year. According to a lot of people, that was unfair to him. I don't know if it's necessarily unfair. I mean, he got one of the only contracts that was offered to him. So I think he should have made more than that, no doubt. But the fact that, no team offered it to him, I guess that speaks a lot to probably his turnovers, his propensity to turn the ball over. He just came off a 2019 season, his last full season. He had career highs in attempts, 626, completions with 380, yards, 5,100, and touchdowns. He had 33 of them. Obviously, he was the 30-30 club. He had 30 interceptions with the 33 touchdowns. So not great. I think that he showed enough in that 2019 season to be deserving of a contract, at least a backup. He could be paid at least $8 million. I'm expecting somewhere in the $10 to $12 million range per year. Might only be for 1 year again. He didn't really prove anything last year. He only threw, let's see, I have it written down here. He only threw 7 passes in 2020 for 75 yards. And oddly enough, 63 of the 75 yards came in games where Breeze was injured. Where he was injured. So, I mean, it wasn't even, he was just coming in for Taysom. It was only in the game where Breeze initially got hurt and Jameis came in. And then after that, when Hill had time to prepare for the game, it was his show. Jameis didn't throw a pass in any game that Breeze was out for the entire game. So it's interesting to note, and obviously we have the fact that, Taysom Hill is still coming back, so we don't even know if Jameis would be the quarterback if they re-sign him. They might re-sign him to another short deal and have him be the backup again. Depends on how much he's going to want, how much they're going to want to pay him, what their cap restrictions are going to be. Like I said, they have a pretty terrible cap situation, so they're going to have to be finding money wherever they can. But we know that Breeze, it's expectation Breeze is going to retire in 2021. The Saints dropped his pay to the league minimum, and that's just paving the way for his retirement. That little move actually is a pretty slick move they did. It dropped more than $20 million from his dead cap hit when he does retire. So that was a major loophole, to say the least, that they're able to get away with that. But good for them. They dropped a lot of money right off the bat. As far as Jameis goes, just hold him with confidence right now. You're paying nothing to keep him rostered. There's really no downside to keep him until you find out what his new contract's going to be. Next player, Ty Montgomery. Not really going to talk much about him. He has yet to pass 121 touches in any season. He's only averaged 72 touches per season in his career. He's only owned in 8.25% dynasty owner league. So he's borderline, like I said, to even mention, but I expect him to sign about a $2 to $3 million per year contract. Cheap price for running back. But even at that point, I mean, if he's not playing, I would let him go. There's no unless he signs with a team where he becomes their for sure number 2. But I doubt that, to be honest. He just hasn't shown enough, I don't think, for a team to trust him as their number 2 back. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into our breakdown. We're only going to talk about one player today, and I'm going to pull up my article here so we can see some of the info. And I'm going to put you right on this chart here. And I'll read this off for everybody that's listening to the podcast. I'll try to do a little bit better reading off the numbers here. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So single player I'm going to talk about today from the Saints. He's a wide receiver. It's Emmanuel Sanders. He has 1 year left on his contract. He signed in early 2020. Contract is 2 years, 80 million. I'm sorry, 8 million per year, 2 years. There's a few directions Sanders' career could go, and it's really up in the air. First, he could play out the 2021 season with the Saints, enter free agency in 2021. He'll be 34 years old when he does, so he's kind of getting towards what seems like the end of a wide receiver's lifespan. But the second one, and I think it's the more likely scenario, is that he's going to get cut by the Saints this offseason. I beat a dead horse, but I can say it as many times as I want. The Saints have to find some room to cut cap during this offseason. I think if they cut him, it's a half of his remaining salary for the dead cap hit. So they'd save about $4 million in space. Not a lot, but I mean, they're just going to have to decide whether they want to pay that full $8 million or cut it by $4 million. Either way, cutting space, it's not going to solve all their problems, but free up that $4 million, it'd help a little bit. I'm not claiming he's going to be cut. That's not my prediction, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do. The Saints are definitely looking into it. If it's going to make sense for them financially, then they're going to do it. So let me pull back up the article, and we're going to see how his value compares to other receivers around him. So I compared Emmanuel Sanders to including him. So we have 5 receivers here. 4 other receivers I'm comparing him to. First one is Amari Cooper. Amari makes $20 million. He has 4 years left. He had 236.8 fantasy points last year. He didn't miss any games. He's 99% owned. And he had a dynasty dollar for fantasy point. That's our value metric here, dynasty owner, of right around $85,000. So he's the top end of all these players. Obviously, that makes sense. He's the most expensive. $20 million is a big price tag to pay, even for the seemingly good, output that he had, even without Dak. So right in the middle, I have 3 receivers. We have Jameis Crowder, Emmanuel Sanders, and Devontae Parker. So all of them make right around between $7.5 and $9.5 million. And they're all spaced within 10 fantasy points of each other in the 2020 season. So right around each other. And they all are right in between about $46,000 and $54,000 for dynasty dollar per fantasy point. So they're all in the same range. It's not great value. It's not terrible. It's what it is. They're middle of the road, middle tier salary receivers. So they're all owned in 77% leagues or more. Devontae's the one that's owned in 99. But then we have Michael Gallup, who I wanted to include, Amari's teammate. He made $880,000 last year, and his dynasty dollar per fantasy point was $5,000, right? A little over $5,000, and he missed 1 game. 100% owned, obviously. And so I tried to give you those 2 little tiers to show what's in the middle. Obviously, you have Michael Gallup, who's on almost a league minimum salary. And then you have Amari, who he was on the biggest salary. So one of the biggest, at least second. So it just kind of shows, where we're at as far as Emmanuel Sanders. He's literally right in the middle there of what the value is you're going to expect to get. And Amari finished as wide receiver 15. So, the question is, in a vacuum, obviously you're going to take Amari. When you're not taking any salary into account, you're going to take Amari because he's got more fantasy points. He had, looks like right at about 73 more fantasy points than Emmanuel Sanders did. So I obviously won him, but we take into account salary. So this is the question that I posed in my article. Would you rather have Cooper or Sanders? It depends on your roster construction, depends on how much cap space you have available going into 2021. It's not surprising that Cooper's owned in 20% more leagues because people are willing to pay up for a known rather than a cheaper unknown. That makes sense. So would you rather do this? Because this is what it comes down to essentially is, would you rather have 40% of Cooper's salary with 70% of the fantasy production, or would you rather pay up the other 60% for 100% of Cooper's production? So you're getting 40% of the salary with 70% of the fantasy production with Sanders. And so, that sounds pretty good when you put it that way. And it's never that easy where, it's one guy or the other. Obviously, you can make those comparisons all day. But regardless, I think it's pretty much been shown that Sanders is the better value, pure value. Going into 2021, who knows where he's going to be? Who knows where he's going to play for? So I just want to break that down and show you the little comparison between Cooper and Sanders. And also keep in mind that Sanders played in 2 less games than Cooper did. So it's worth noting. because he missed 2 games and Cooper played in every game. So I could listen to either argument. I mean, and also you have the fact that Cooper didn't have Dak throwing to him for only 4 games. He only had 4.5 games last year. So he had 3/4 of the season. He didn't have Dak. So the numbers are bound to go up in 2021. So just keep that in mind as we, look forward to the new 2021 NFL season. But as far as that goes, I think that's all I want to talk about today. I appreciate everybody reading. Next week, I got a few new things. We're going to be starting a new division. So I haven't quite decided yet, but we're going to be talking about an AFC team. So first time we've jumped to the AFC. And then I'm also going to do a few new things about working trades, like mock trades into some of my breakdowns. So that'll be interesting to see how I figure that out. And if it can help, somebody make a decent trade, then that'll be great. But I appreciate you watching the video. Go ahead and read the article. Follow us on Twitter, Dynasty Owner, and then obviously subscribe on YouTube so you can get all these videos when they first come out. I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope you all be safe and have a good day.